Good morning, everyone. I, Dr. Sarita Singh, Associate Professor in Sri Sai College of Pharmacy. It's my pleasure to welcome you all in this online expert talk. This is organized by Sri Sai College of Pharmacy, which is a unit of Ghanshyam Group of Institution. Sri Sai College of Pharmacy was established in the year 2019 with the course of Diploma in Pharmacy and followed by Bachelor in Pharmacy in 2020. It is situated in the holistic city Prayagraj, Handia, Uttar Pradesh. Now I would like to welcome our respected principal Dr. Sunil Singh and our founder Mr. Vivek Kumar Singh and Mr. Vinod Kumar Singh and all participants, students and our respected faculty members. Now with warm welcome, I would like to invite Mr. our eminent speaker, Mr. Dr. DILPESH Prakash Jain. He is manager in Pfizer, which is a pharma company, healthcare private limited at Chennai. And Dr. Jain completed his PhD on the topic of evaluation of bioflavonoids in diabetic neuropathy. And Dr. Jain has more than 14 years of professional experience and expertise in the authoring of several scientific research papers and documents which pertaining the safety data and he has published more than 31 research papers in national and international journals. He guided more than 50 UG students and 20 PG students for their dissertation work. Dr. Jain has appreciated for various awards such as Excellence Award in Teaching Performance and Best Review Paper Awards, Best Poster Awards, and Professor S.B. Sonewal Memorial Awards. Now I would like to call Dr. Dilpesh Prakash Jain to deliver the talk on the topic of aggregate reporting and overview. Please, sir, continue.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Sarita, for the detailed and wonderful introductions, and thank you, Dr. Sunil Singh and Sri Sai College of Pharmacy for giving me this opportunity to deliver a talk on aggregate reporting, which is at another like very good career options for pharma students. So thank you so much for inviting me and arranging this expert talk. So I'll start my presentation. So today I'll be presenting on aggregate reporting, which is a very important aspect in the PV system. And it's also very important for the marketing authorization perspective to continue to report the safety and efficacy of the medicines to the regulators. So before starting with the presentations, I would just like to make a disclaimer that any facts and opinion presented in this slide deck or which I'm going to explain is my own opinions, and my company and any other society where I'm affiliated is not attributed to it. So in the next 1 hour, we're going to see what is the history of pharmacovigilance, definitions of pharmacovigilance, what are the basic terminologies which are used in the PV system, how the PV workflow works, like how the case reports, what is aggregate reporting, expedited reporting, and we'll touch upon the various aggregate reports. Those need to be submitted by the marketing authorization holder during the life cycle of the drug. It may be at the pre-approval stage, some documents are required to be submitted, and during the post-authorization stage, few documents are required to submit to the marketing authorization holder. So before starts upon the PV, what exactly is, we'll just touch upon the historical background of the pharmacovigilance. So if you see in the historical background of the pharmacovigilance, though we know many people know about the pharmacovigilance in these days, but it's not a new science or new activities. It started about 170 years ago, and the first case was reported by a young girl from the North England, Anaha's death. So Anaha was a young girl who died due to the chloroform anesthesia, who died after the chloroform anesthesia. But at that time, it was not possible what actually killed Anaha's. And it was considered that maybe the arrhythmia is attributed to her cause of death. But later on, there were several reports coming out which claims that the administration of chloroform causing the death, and then it was considered that the chloroform anesthesia is linked to the death. Followed this Anaha's death in 1937 in USA, there like 107 deaths were reported because of the people who consumed the sulfanilamide elixir. Actually, in this case, the drug sulfanilamide is not responsible for the death, but however, the solvent which is used to prepare this elixir, diethyl glycol, is linked to the cause of death. But at the time of that, the manufacturer didn't know about it, whether the diethyl glycol is responsible for the death. So following these incidences in the following these incidences, consequently in the USA, the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Board was established, and the purpose of this act to just renovate the public health system and to give the maximum to focus on the safety of the medicine. After this 1938 incidents in 1955, there was a gastrointestinal toxicity was observed in the acetyl salicylic amino acid, and that is why nowadays this acetyl salicylic acid is still contraindicated in the patient who is suffering with the gastrointestinal ulcer. So these are the few incidences in the past which stimulate the PV system, but the big change happened after the thalidomide tragedy. I'm sure many of in the life science background of the pharmaceutical teachers or the students are aware about the thalidomide tragedy. So all the PV system has occurred a big change following this thalidomide tragedy. So what happens? What exactly happens in thalidomide tragedy was, actually, there were in Europe, there were many reports are coming out with a baby, the new delivered baby with a congenital anomalies. So in those congenital anomalies is what occurs as like there is a limbless baby, and those limbless baby is called as phocomelia. So later on, the retrospective analysis was carried out, and it was attributed that the pregnant woman who consumed the thalidomide during the first trimester of pregnancy is responsible that thalidomide is responsible for the phocomelia or the congenital anomalies in the baby. So thousands of babies were delivered, and that was a big change, and that stimulated the need of the pharmacovigilance system or the safety monitoring even after the drug is approved or the drug is marketed. So these big change stimulated the Europe. Then United Kingdom has started the yellow card system. So what is this yellow card system? It is started in 1964, and this yellow card system is nothing but a form which compile the safety data of the spontaneous report. After this, in 1965, the European legislation was developed to monitor the drug safety. And in 1968, the WHO ran the several programs for intentional drug monitoring. And these programs were monitored. Several studies were conducted to check, to observe the side effect or the adverse effect of a medicines. In 1995, the EMA is the European Medicines Agency. It's a regulatory authority in Europe, was set up, and later on, this EMA was funded the UDRA Vigilance. The UDRA Vigilance is nothing but the central database in European which accumulate and analyze the spontaneous reports. So it started in 2001. Again, in 2012, a new European pharmacovigilance legislations was established, which focus on more structured way to analyze the report and to assess the safety concerns. And in 2017, the new UDRA vigilance format came out, which gives a several format to report the safety of a medicines in the different perspective with various reports. So these are all the historical background which stimulate the PV system, and now we can see that PV is very strong, and it's every MH has an obligation to submit the pharmacovigilance data once the drug is marketed or before the drug is once the drug is marketed or the drug is under development. Next slide, please. So though we know that the medicines, when it reaches out to the patient, the medicines is tested in non-clinical and clinical settings. In non-clinical, we tested upon the safety and efficacy of medicines, and after the non-clinical testing, the medicines the investigational drug was tested into the clinical trials. So in clinical trials also, we have the several settings: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 3 trials, which is focused on this safety and efficacy medicines. But still, the medicine or the drug shows its side effect or adverse effect which may cause the withdrawal of a drug when it is used in clinical practice. So why these clinical studies are not sufficient? Because these clinical studies has this several limitations, so compared to the clinical practice. So what are those limitations? Let me tell you the number of patients. If you know the first number of patient is the in clinical study, we hardly use the thousands patient even if it is the phase 3 study. Actually, if it is a phase 1 study, only the few numbers like 10 or 20 participants were enrolled, and hundreds participant in phase 2, and the thousands participant in phase 3, not more than that. So the number of participants are very limited in the clinical study, while when the drug is approved and becomes available into the market, it is used by a millions number of patients. The second aspect of limitation is duration. When the drug is tested in the clinical practice, it's only tested for certain weeks or from months. But while the drug, when it is available into the market, the drug is utilized or consumed for the years by the patient. In clinical study, those are the controlled clinical study. Controlled clinical study means the investigator has owned its right and they run their study they run the study as per their needs. So generally, the vulnerable populations or the uh, pregnantly women, the children's, elderlies are generally excluded in the clinical study. But when the drug becomes available into the market, these populations are also have an access to use of those drugs, and they might report the certain side effects. The next one is concomitant medication. As these clinical studies are the control studies, so investigator has their own control whether to use the concomitant medications or not. So generally, all the concomitant medications are avoided. But when the drug is used in the clinical practice, mainly the concomitant medications or the other medications the patient is simultaneously taking, and that may result into the several drug interactions and which may cause a certain side effect. So dose in as it is a controlled study, clinical study, so the dose is fixed by the investigator. But when it comes into the clinical practice, patient may change the dose due to its abuse or misuse or some off-label use or medication error. So these dose can vary in clinical practice. So these are the certain limitations by which we cannot identify all the side effect or all the safety profile of a drug when it is being tested into the clinical study, and therefore a continuous monitoring of the drug is required when it is used into the clinical practice. So I hope I have made you clear like why the pharmacovigilance is too important to check the drug safety because of the past incidences of the history of the side effect. So what is pharmacovigilance? So pharmacovigilance is the, if you see the pharmacovigilance, if you divide into two words, so pharmakon, it's a Greek word and which means like medical substances, and vigilia, it's a Latin word which called as a to keep watch. So pharmacovigilance is nothing but is to keep a watch on the medical system or medical substance, even though if it is being marketed utilized by the after the approval. So EMA has defined the pharmacovigilance, and as per the EMA, the definition of pharmacovigilance is the science and activities. So it is not only the science, but there are the certain set of activities that we need to conduct in the pharmacovigilance to analyze the safety database or to analyze the safety profile of the drug. So pharmacovigilance is the science and activities relating to the detection, so collection and detection. So first we have to collect the reports, then we have to detect the report, then assess the report, then understanding and prevention of adverse effect of any other medicines or vaccine related problem. So what are the outcomes of pharmacovigilance? So pharmacovigilance is not only check on the safety profile, but it also check the efficacy profile. Many times we see that certain drugs may show the therapeutic effectiveness when it is used into the clinical study, but when it is used by the large population or some other set of population, some patient reports the lack of therapeutic efficacy, means the drug is not working perfectly or not giving any pharmacological effect. So that aspect is also being checked or the watched into the pharmacovigilance. So outcomes of this pharmacovigilance is to check the safety profile of a drug as well as to check the efficacy of a drug. So in short, if I want to explain the what is pharmacovigilance, is nothing but does a drug work and is it safe? Next slide, please. So what are the objectives of the pharmacovigilance? So as we see, the previous slide, please. So what is the objective of pharmacovigilance? The next. slide, please. Okay, so what are the objectives of pharmacovigilance? The objective of pharmacovigilance is to detect the unknown adverse effect of drug interaction. So in pharmacovigilance, we check the adverse effect and also the drug interactions, because the certain drug interactions is not possible to check in the clinical study, because those are the control study, and the concomitant medications or the other suspect medications are generally avoided. And the second one is, the once it is detected, or the adverse effect are detected and the drug interactions are detected, the distribution of these information about the adverse effect of a drug and drug interaction to the physician, so that they can less occur frequently. Also, the objective of pharmacovigilance is to timely corrections of the therapeutic error. So generally, when the drug is used in the clinical practice, many times the medications error may occur. So medication error means the error in administrating or dispensing or the distributing of the medicines. And those medication error reports, if it is identified and assessed, so we can timely correct the therapeutic errors. Then it also give an opportunity to reevaluate the risk benefit balance. We know the before approval, the regulatory authority perform the risk benefit analysis based on the clinical study data. But in pharmacovigilance, once the drug is used in clinical practice, by these reports, the regulator also have a chance to reevaluate the risk benefit balance, and so they can effectively use those drugs for a patient which has a more benefits and the fewer side effect. And the last one is the pharmacovigilance is also objective is to identify the mechanism and cause of that cause the adverse drug effect of a drugs. Next slide, please. So, what is undesirable effect? Generally, we see that all the pharmacovigilance is basically discussed, or the prior is mostly focus on the undesirable effect. So undesirable effect is nothing but the untoward or the untoward effect of the medical medicines. So if the drug is used in clinical trials, so sometimes the adverse event occurs, or this undesirable effect occurs, and if it is considered, if it is not related to the investigational drug, those adverse effect or those undesirable effect is called as adverse event. And if these adverse events are assessed as serious, so what is meant by serious? Suppose if one adverse event occurs, and if that adverse event outcome is a death, or the adverse effect is responsible for the life-threatening condition, or it leads to the prolongation of hospitalization, it may lead to the congenital anomaly as we see in thalidomide, or it may cause the persistent disability or incapacity, or any other medically significant event is associated with the adverse event, those adverse events are considered as a serious adverse event. And second one is, the if the undesirable effect is considered as related to the investigational drug, then that undesirable effect is called as adverse drug reaction. And if these adverse drug reactions are assessed as is either reporting one of the 6 seriousness criteria, then those adverse drug reactions are called as serious adverse drug reactions. So I may have so my point is here, the undesirable effect may be of two types. It may be an adverse event. Generally, the adverse events are occurs into the clinical study, because one cannot assess or one cannot correlate at that time whether it is related to the investigational drug or not. But if the undesirable effect is occurs into the clinical practice, and if it is considered related to the investigational drug, it is called as adverse drug reactions. And these are the 6 seriousness criteria, which is very important for the reporting of the cases to the regulatory authority, which will we see in the next upcoming slides. So next slide. So before move ahead on the pharmacovigilance, we just there are the several terminologies that are used in the pharmacovigilance, but we will touch upon very few terminologies which is very important to understand for the further slides. So first terminology is investigational product or investigational drug. So what is meant by investigational product? Any experimental product under the study or development, those product is called as the investigational product. The second one is the adverse event. We just have seen the any untoward medical occurrence in a patient or clinical trial subject administered a medicinal product which does not necessarily have a causal relationship with the treatment. Okay, and those events are called as the adverse event. While if there is a causal association or there is a certain possibility that the adverse event is related to the medicinal substance, then those undesirable effects are called as the adverse drug reaction. So every drug has their own has the adverse drug reactions or the safety profile, and those safety profile is written in a one document. So next is the CCDS. So what is CCDS? CCDS is the company core data sheet. So what is company core data sheet? Is nothing but a document. So every pharmaceutical, every marketing authorization. So here marketing authorization means nothing but a pharmaceutical company which has a right to sell that product into the market. So what is CCDS? So every pharmaceutical company or the MAH has to prepare a document where they maintain or they mention all the safety information about that product. Okay, so what are the safety information there in that document? You might see the warning and precaution section is there, like certain warnings and contraindication sections is there. Then the use of those medicines in fertility, pregnancy, and lactation, the undesirable effect, the drug interaction. So those are the safety information. And CCDS is a complete document that does not that or not contain only the safety information, but it contains all the material related information. Means what is the dose, indication, dosing, posology, pharmacology, clinical pharmacology, study data. So all those informations are present in one document, and that document is called as the company core data sheet, or the CDS. In short, it is called as CCDS or CDS, the company core data sheet. Next slide, please. So So not only the company core data sheet, but the from MH has also need to present or prepare the CSI. So what is CSI? Is called as the company core safety information. So company core data sheet include the safety information, but along with the safety information that include all the medicines related information. But while in CSI, it only contain the safety information, and the MH has required to list or in all the countries or to prepare and submit the CSI to all the countries where they have the marketing authorization or where they are selling their product. In apart from the CSI, certain local regulatory based on the certain local regulatory requirement, the MH has to prepare a local label or local product information document that is called as an LPD. So every drug related information or the side effect associated with the drugs are mentioned into the CSI or CCDS, right? So if any, the next is expected and unexpected event. So what is meant by expected event? Previous slide, please. So what is meant by expected adverse event? So expected adverse drug reactions are nothing but if the adverse reaction is well documented in CDS or CSI, those are called an expected adverse drug reaction. For example, suppose if you're taking the metformin, the side effect is associated as a hypoglycemia. Okay, so if the case is comes to you and if it is suggesting that the case is reported the hypoglycemia as an adverse event, that hypoglycemia is already there in CDS or CCI, so you though it can consider as an expected adverse event. Second one is an unexpected adverse event. If an adverse event is not well documented in the CDS or CSI, those events are called as the unexpected adverse event. For an example, if you are taking metformin and the patient is reporting the hair fall. Okay, so since that hair fall is not documented as a side effect or in any other safety information section in CDS or CSI, then those events are called as the unexpected event. So, similarly, there are the suspected, unexpected, serious adverse reactions. So, these terminology is mainly used in the, it is in short, it is called as SUSA, and these terms are mainly used in the clinical study. So, what is suspected, unexpected, serious adverse drug reaction? So, it is a term that refers to any adverse event that generally occurs into the clinical trial subject where the investigator is unexpected, but unexpected those unexpected the side effect based on the product profile, but he can suspect any adverse drug reactions and which is related to the medicinal product or which has the causal relationship with the medicinal product, and those adverse drug event is called as the SUSAR, that is called as suspected, unexpected, serious adverse drug reactions. Once again, I would like to explain you. Serious means those which are meeting the 6 seriousness criteria in the report. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So far we have just seen the what is the historical aspect, what is pharmacovigilance, and what are the objectives, and the what are the basic terminologies. Now, how this PV workflow works. So PV workflow starts from the case report. Okay, so case is reported to the regulatory authority, or the case might be reported to the MH, marketing authorization. And how it is should be reported, it may reported as a spontaneous report. Suddenly a patient can fill a form and submit to the regulatory agency, or there are the several ways by which the patient or the reporter can report the case to the regulatory authority or the MH. So those are called the spontaneous report. The second one is the literature source. So many literature or meta-analysis documents are there from which the cases are pulled up into the database. Third one is the clinical trials and the internet. So these are the sources of the case report. So once the case comes into the report to the MAH or the regulatory authority, the ICSR case processing starts. So what is ICSR? ICSR is called as the individual case safety report. Okay. So in ICSR case processing starts. So what are the steps in ICSR case processing? So once the case is reported to the regulatory authority or the MAH, they first check the duplicate check. So duplicate check is what? If the similar case is already been reported into the database, so they have to check whether the same case, same information is there. If the same information is there, which is already reported and documented into the database, they have to remove that case. Or if any new information is reported in the same case, then they have to update as a follow-up information. So duplicate check is carried out to avoid the same case into with the multiple reporting. After the duplicate check is completed, then second one is a triage. So what is mean triage? Triage is means gives the priority. So whenever the case is reported to the regulatory authority, the case may be reported with the serious side effect. Okay, serious side effect. The case may be reported with the unserious or the non-serious side effect, or the listed side effect or the unlisted side effect. And the case may not be is a true case. So what is meant by true case? So when you call as a true case, so whenever the case is reported, it should contain the four parameter. So one is the case should contain an identifiable patient. The case should contain the identifiable reporter. The case must have the information of the suspect product, and there must be an adverse event. So if the case report is meeting all those four criteria, then that case is called as a true case. If any one criteria is missing in the case, that is not considered as a true case, and it is not documented into the safety database. So triage means the triage means it gives the priority. Suppose if the case is reported and that case is reported with the unlisted or unexpected side effect, and those are the serious, the priority is given the first to report it to the regulatory authority. Then second priority is the cases with the non-serious unexpected side effect, and the third one is the case not a true case. Okay, so that activity is called as the triage activity, which prioritizes which case needs to be completed into the safety database first. So once the triage or the sorting of the case is done, then these cases were entered into the data entry. So data entry operator fill all those information into the safety database. So currently the very well-known safety database we use like RSG or the Argus. So these are the safety database where the cases are entered. After the data is entered, the quality review was performed, whether the all information was put correctly or entered in correctly into the database or not. Once the quality review is performed, the case is forwarded to the medical reviewer for the medical review. So in medical review check the assessment of the case, whether the event is listed or unlisted. So what is meant by listed? Or same thing is expected. If the event is mentioned into the label, or the event is mentioned into the CDS or CSI, those events are called as a listed event. Or if the event is not mentioned into the CDS or CSI, it is called as an unlisted event. So this medical review perform the listedness and also the seriousness and non-seriousness. They assess the case whether it is serious or non-serious. For example, uh, suppose the pyrexia is mentioned into the CDS, so it is called pyrexia is mentioned. But if the pyrexia is called as the febrile neutropenia, sorry, neutropenia is mentioned, but it is associated with the febrile neutropenia. So the febrile neutropenia is the more serious form of the neutropenia. So like that, the medical review has a role to give the seriousness assessment, whether the case has a serious event or the non-serious event, whether the case has a listed event or unlisted event, and give the medical judgment on that case. And once the medical review is completed, the case is closed into the safety database. So now once the case is closed and the case is added into the safety database, the next thing is there are the two types of reporting. We need to, once the case is documented into the image or the company safety database, they need to be reported to the regulatory authority to take the further action. Okay. So what are the reporting? So if an individual case to be reported, so that reporting is called as an expedited reporting. So what cases need to be reported as expedited reporting? The cases which comes to the safety data, the cases which has the serious and unlisted side effect, means the side effect is not documented into the product label, and those adverse event are the serious in nature. Serious in nature means due to that adverse event, the death may occur, the long hospitalization may occur, congenital anomalies occurs, or any medically significant adverse event occurs. Those cases should be reported immediately to the regulatory authority, and that individual case reporting is called as an expedited reporting. Okay. So different regulatory has the different timelines, but mostly it should be reported within the 7 to 15 days once upon receipt of the case. Okay. So expedited reporting works on the single case submission. Previous slide please. Single case submission, while the second reporting is the aggregate reporting. So when we submit the case to the regulatory authority as a single case, it will not give a clear overview of the picture. So the second case is called as the aggregate reporting. So we have to cumulatively analyzes the cases which is submitted to the certain period and make a safety analysis document, and that document need to be submitted to the regulatory authority, and those documents are called as an aggregate reporting. So aggregate reporting is nothing but which gives the cumulative overview of the individual case safety report, and those documents are submitted to the regulatory bodies. And if these documents suggest any changes into the risk benefit profile of the product, then regulatory bodies can take the actions, can take the further action to mitigate the risk. Next slide please. So what is aggregate reporting? So just now we see the aggregate reporting is nothing but it gives the review of the cumulative safety information from wide range of sources on a periodic basis. So aggregate reports are scheduled on a periodic basis. Sometimes for few aggregate reports need to be submitted 6 monthly, some aggregate reports need to be submitted yearly, some aggregate reports are submitted once in a 3 year or once in a 5 year. So accordingly, the aggregate reports are scheduled as per the how old the molecule, the drug is, and what are the how the dynamic is the risk benefit analysis in for that molecule. So the aggregate report is provide the cumulative safety information for the wide range of sources, and we have to submit these reports on a periodic basis to the regulatory authority. So what is aggregate report? As we've seen, they provide the cumulative safety information, so it does not focus on the individual cases. Rather, it gives an overview or the assessment of the safety profile or the risk benefit evaluation. And it also analyzes the medicinal product benefit risk balance throughout its life cycle. So what are the benefits of the aggregate reports? The advantage of the aggregate reports is it enables the understanding of the risk benefit evaluation of the product over a prolonged period of time, and it also provides a broader view of the safety profile of the drug. Next slide please. So what are the responsive, so what are these regulators? So we know that there are there are many regulatory authorities, but to name a few, like European Medicines Agency, this is a regulatory authority which we need to submit the for which works for the Europe. FDA is work for the US. Then TGA, that is Therapeutic Good Administration, is a regulatory authority of the Australia. Then PMDA, Pharmaceutical and Medicinal Device Agency for Japan. Health Canada for Canada. ANCM for France. CDSCO for India. We have the regulatory authority where they analyze the data, and that is called as the CDSCO, Central Drug Standards Control Organizations. So what are the responsibilities on aggregate reporting? So the person who prepared the report, schedule the report, or who works for the aggregate reports are called as the aggregate report analyst. And what are the responsibilities of aggregate report analyst? The first responsibility is to retrieve and analyze the safety data. from the global safety database. So when we have already discussed, the case is reported, the case is entered into the safety database. If it is following unexpected and the serious kind of, so we need to submit those cases in expedited reporting, and again non-serious cases can be submitted to the regulatory authority on a batch wise. So all these clinical all these study cases are entered into the safety database. So, and we need to prepare the aggregate report on a periodic basis. So aggregate report analyst has to retrieve the cases from and analyze those cases from the safety database. After analyzing those cases, they perform consistent and accurate analysis to establish the risk benefit balance of the product. Okay, and once the risk benefit balance of the product is performed, they also alert the physician of a potential event, and also assist the physician in monitoring the safety profile of the product. The aggregate report analyst also has the responsibility for the creation and maintenance of the periodic safety report. Like they have maintained the timetables, calendars when it is need to be prepared. Also, they are involved into the tracking and managing of the preparation of report, like based on the reporting time period and the database check. Then medical review of the reports prepared, and after once the medical review, it forwarded to for the submission to the health authority, which complies the health authority timelines for those reports. And apart from these aggregate reports, sometimes the medical or health authority gives some health authority or regulatory authority is the same thing. They give some if they receive some cases where the detailed analysis is required based on the safety database. So the aggregate report analyst also handles and responding to the HA queries. Next slide, please. So we just discussed the PV take care of a drug molecule through its entire life cycle. So we need to prepare the certain reports during the pre-approval stage and after and the post-marketing or the post-approval stage. So what are the reports we need to submit to the health authority or regulatory authority during the pre-approval stage? So these reports are called as the IND. Generally, the US required the IND annual reports when the drug is under the clinical study, and in Europe, it is required the Europe annual safety report. But what happens? These two documents, if marketing authorization is conducting any studies in two different regions, they have to prepare two different reports. Okay, so to avoid this, now these two reports are harmonized, and only a single report is prepared, and that report is called as the developmental safety update report, DSUR. Okay, so DSUR is the report which need to be submitted to the health authority when the drugs is under the clinical study. What are the post-marketing reports? Again, the different regulatory authority have their different formats to accept the data or the post-marketing safety data. So some, to name a few, some reports are the PSUR or the PBRAD. Okay, so PSUR is nothing but PSUR is called as a periodic safety update report, which gives the entire information of the safety data based on the risk assessment of the molecule for the particular period, as well as the new now EMA is only accept the PBRAD. They don't not only want to check the risk of the product, but also they have to look upon the benefit product, and they generally perform the benefit risk evaluation into the document, and that document is called as the PBRA document. So PBRA is the periodic benefit risk evaluation report. So those reports are generally filled submitted to the Europe and other countries. Then in US, we need to submit the two reports based on the drug. If the drugs are used for the drugs, periodic adverse drug experience report, that is called as PADER, is submitted. And if the biological substance like biosimilars or vaccines is approved, so for those category of the drug, we need to submit the pair document, that is called as periodic adverse experience report. So PADER is for drug and pair is for the biologicals and vaccines. In Canada, they also have their own format to report the safety information, and that is called as the Canadian Annual Summary Reports, CAR. There is one more document we need to submit to the regulatory authority, that is called as addendum to the clinical overview, that is called as an ACO. So generally this ACO document is required whenever there is a need to require the renewal of the license. Okay, so these ACO documents is submitted for that. So what is that? So all documents contain, mostly the purpose or the objective of all this document is just to provide the safety or the analysis of the drug, or to provide the adverse event or to provide the what are the expected unexpected side effect reported for the drug molecule, but the format is little different for each report, but the objectives remain same. So why is so what is the objective then there? Then this is ensure the continuous, so this document ensures the continuous monitoring of the safety balance of medicinal product at defined time points, means before its and after its marketing authorization. It also provides a cumulative safety information. It supports the timely submission of the information to the regulatory body, and these documents enables the regulatory assessment of the safety profile and the benefit risk evaluation. Next slide, please. So before we move on this different type of safety report, we'll just touch upon the various basic terminologies that generally used while scheduling and creating this report. So very important concept is called as the data log point. So every drug has their data log point, means we have to take the information to a certain date. So what is this data log point is? It is designed as the cutoff date of for data to be included into the aggregate report, and that cutoff date is called as the data log point. And how to define this data log point, or what parameters considered to consider this data log point or the cutoff date? So there are the two date generally we use, that is called as an international birth date and the developmental international birth date of the molecule. So generally, the international birth date is used for the PBR PSUR document, and the DIBD, that is called as developmental international birth date, is used as to define the cutoff date for the DSUR. So what is developmental international birth date? Developmental international birth date is nothing but a date of first approval for conducting an interventional clinical trial in any country. Okay, so suppose the drug X is new drug, and the regulatory authority gave an approval to start a clinical study today, 25th June 2020. So this 25th June 2020 is considered as a DIBD, means developmental international birth date, and generally these DSURs are submitted yearly. Okay, so what is the data log point for this? So from 25th June 2022 to 24th June 2023. So 24, we need to analyze the cases which is submitted within this period, and prepare the document. So 24th June 2023 is the DLP, or the data log point for this report. So generally DIBD is used for the DSUR. So what is international birth date? International birth date is nothing but the date of first marketing authorization of any product containing the active substance. Any product means, suppose the active substance is methylprednisolone, but the methylprednisolone is available in tablet, capsules, injection. So any dosage form which received the first approval, that is called as anywhere in the world, any country in the world, that's called as the international birth date. And these international birth date is considered for the to find the data log point for the PSUR PBR. Okay, so please understand, DIBD is used for the DSUR. DIBD is nothing but the first approval for conducting the interventional clinical trial, and IBD is the data used to have a data log point for the PSUR, and that is nothing but the first marketing authorization of any product containing the active substance in the any country in the world. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we have defined, identified and potential risk. So whenever we prepare the CDS or CSI, it contains the adverse effect, and all these adverse effects are called as either categorized as identified risk or potential risk. So what is this identified and potential risk? So identified risk is nothing but in any untoward occurrence for which there is adequate evidence of an association with the medical product of interest, then this is called as an identified risk. Suppose if there is a if you conduct the non-clinical trials and you find some side effect, and these side effects are also observed in clinical trial, okay, and these are well documented, the frequency is high enough to consider as a risk. So these risk is called as an identified risk. So generally any adverse event which is mentioned in the warning precautions, and that is also it is mentioned either into the drug interaction as well as in 4.8, like that is the undesirable effect. So those is called as an identified risk. So identified, once again I'm changing, so identified risk as the adverse and untoward occurrence where there is a sufficient evidence to consider that the association of medicinal product event and the medicinal product of interest. While the potential risk is that there is an untoward occurrence in which there is some basis of suspicious, or there is some scientific evidence only, whether that consider that association of the medicinal product of interest and and the event, but which is not yet been confirmed, and those called as the potential risk. For example, if you find out any adverse event or notice any adverse event or side effect into the non-clinical trials, but those adverse events are not observed into the clinical trial, or observed but very less frequently, then those risks are called as a potential risk. In PV, the potential after the further monitoring of the safety database, the potential risk may be upgraded to the identified risk if it is occurs in the severity and the seriousness criteria. And the same thing, identified risk may be removed if it is fully characterized and fully investigated. So these are the identified and potential risks. The very important aspect to check into the to provide the data in these regulatory documents or the aggregate documents is the data on important identified risk and important potential risk. So we just see in identified risk where there is a suspicious or where there is adequate evidences between the event and the medicinal product of interest, and if this association or if this adverse event is impacting to the public health, then those adverse events are called as important identified risk. So how it is called as an important public affecting the public health? Suppose these adverse events are reported in a high frequency and a high seriousness criteria, so those adverse events are called as an important identified risk. Similarly, if there is a potential risk, if it is impacting to the public health, then it is called as an important potential risk. One should understand that we have a product label. I think you might have, many of you have seen that whenever the label is come, or the we may see in some literature inside the medicinal box where we have the adverse event, okay, listed. So consider all adverse events are not the important identified risk. Only some adverse event considered as important identified risk based on the data reported, based on the frequency and the seriousness reported for that particular event. Next slide, please. So we'll just touch upon the several aggregate reports that need to be submitted. So far, we have seen what the aggregate reports are of two types: the aggregate report submitted during the pre-approval stage, and the aggregate report submitted on the post-approval stage. So very well-known aggregate report which is submitted in the pre-approval stage is called as the DSUR. That is called as a Developmental Safety Update Report. Next slide, please. So what is this DSUR? DSUR is nothing but a common regulatory. It's a regulatory document intended to be prepared for the common standard of periodic reporting of a drug under development among the ICH region, and it also harmonizes the format and content of the periodic safety reporting during the clinical trial, and it will also take place. I already explained you, like the before the DSUR, we need to prepare the two separate documents. For the United States, we need to prepare the IND's annual summary report, and for the European Union, the annual summary safety reports need to be prepared. But this DSUR harmonizes, and the DSUR is prepared or drafted in such a way that it harmonizes the format and content of both these reports to prepare into a single report. So what these DSUR? These DSURs provide the information to assure the regulators that the sponsors are adequately monitoring and evaluating the evolving safety profile of the investigational product. And DSUR is prepared for all biologicals, drugs, vaccines, and combination products. And some many a times it happens like that the drug is still under the clinical development for other indication, but it may be approved for the one indication. So in such case, the DSUR and PSUR both should be prepared for the drug molecule, and it should be submitted as per the specified national and regional laws of the regulations. Next slide, please. Regulation. So the DSUR. So what did DSUR include? The DSUR include the all the pertinent information of the safety of the investigational product, and it does not include only the clinical trial information, but this DSUR, uh, this DSURs also contain the observational and epidemiological studies. So we know that the clinical studies are of two types, maybe interventional studies and non-interventional studies. So interventional studies where the investigator administered the investigational product. Non-interventional studies where there may be the observational studies or the epidemiological studies. Okay, so then DSUR not only to include the investigational interventional drug, but this DSUR also focuses on the any data which is come out from the observational or epidemiological studies. Also, it includes the top non-clinical study data like any toxicological or inventory study data, any related DSUR if applicable to the investigational drug. For example, if you are preparing a drug DSUR for drug X, and if that drug X is also utilized in drug Y development, so any data from that drug Y development is also included into DSUR. We know that whenever we do the clinical trials, so investigational drug is not administered, but the investigational product is administered. The finished product is administered to the patient. Okay, so any manufacturing or the biomicrobiological changes which occurs during the reporting period maybe it associated with a significant change. Those informations are should be reported into the DSUR. It also report include the recently published articles. So not only into the report from the clinical trials, but any article into the database. So we need to search PubMed, Embase, several database for the literature, and if any reports coming out which has a significant impact on the safety profile of that molecule, those information should be included in the DSUR. Also, not only the safety, but also check the lack of efficacy in indicating for the molecule. So some clinical trial result in the lack of efficacy, and sometimes the lack of efficacy has a major or direct impact on the safety profile. Suppose if the drug is administered for the cancer and the drug is not showing at all therapeutic efficacy or pharmacological effect, so in that case it impact to the patient because its underlying condition is progressive, and those information is also documented into the DSUR, and any other relevant safety finding for the product on a therapeutic class, and the clinical trials conducted by co-development. Sometimes not the MH is not only the responsible for development of the product, but MH also outsource the developmental stages to the some other companies. And if those other companies, the co-development companies or co-development partners are also conducting the studies, so those informations are also need to be included into the DSUR. Next slide, please. So we have just discussed the DSUR objective. So what is the objective? It's the DSUR present the comprehensive and thoughtful annual review of the evaluation of the product. It also examines whether the information obtained by the sponsor during the reporting period is in accordance with the previous knowledge of the safety information. It also describes the new safety issues, and it submit to the current understanding and assessment of the product, and it provide an update and the status of the clinical investigation of the drug molecule. Next slide, please. So what this DSUR mainly includes? So these DSUR mainly include the progress of clinical investigation. It also includes the safety information of the product, issues which may impact on the safety and the trial subject, brief statement about the present understanding and management of the identified and potential risk, which we have discussed just now, what is the identified and potential risk. And it also has a statement indicating that whether the data of the current report period is aligned with the known information of the investigational product or not. And if the current status of the product is not in accordance with the known safety profile of the product, then regulatory authority may take the action. So the regulatory authority may take the actions in relation to the suspension of the clinical studies, withdrawal of the drug molecule, or halting of the clinical studies for certain period, or removing of the subject, not allowing some kind of subject. So all those things, the regulatory actions depends on the what data we are submitted into the DSUR based on the study outcome. Next slide, please. So as we discussed, the DIBD is the trigger for the preparation of the DSUR. So DIBD is like the first authorization of the clinical trials anywhere in the world. So once we receive the first authorization anywhere in the world, that generate the DIBD, and then we need to prepare the DSUR. So and DSUR we prepared and generally submit yearly basis. So within 1 year of the DIBD, we need to provide the DSUR, and followed that we need to submit the annually. So just keep in mind that one DSUR for one investigational product. Suppose you are investigating drug X, but the drug is utilized for the certain indication, or the drugs is available in different formulation. However, we need to prepare only a one DSUR for one investigational product, and one DSUR used anywhere around the world, whether you are submitting for the USA, Japan, China, anywhere. Only a one DSUR which is prepared is eligible to submit anywhere in the world. So DSUR should be submitted to all regulatory authority no later than 60 calendar days of the DSUR data log point. So we consider data log point. So what is data log point? If we are submitting the DSUR an annual basis. So I told you one example. Suppose we have received the first approval to conduct the study on today, 25th June 2022. Okay, so what is the data log point for this DSUR is the 24th June 2023, because it's the annual DSUR. So from these 24th June is 2023 is the DLP. From 24th June 2023 to next 60 days, we have a time we need to prepare the data, analyze the data, and submit report to the regulatory authority. So no later than 60 calendar days. So 24th June 2023 is our DLP for DSUR. So we need to submit by 24th July, 23 August. So we have to submit our data by 23rd August 2023 to the regulatory authority. So next slide, please. So I'll just brief you what are the content of the DSUR document. So DSUR document has the 20 sections. Okay. So first section is introduction, where we give the information regarding the drug molecule, mechanism of action, the dosage form, etc. So these information goes into the introduction section. Second one is a worldwide marketing approval status. Suppose the DSUR, the drug is approved into the approved for the marketing approval. So how many market it is approved, how many markets, how many countries it is launched, those information goes into section 2. Section 3 contains the action taken in reporting period of the safety reason, means any action, regulatory actions that has been taken during the reporting period. I told you, like, a regulatory action means the withdrawal of the clinical suspension of the clinical study, withdrawal of a drug molecule from certain market. So any significant action that happens during the reporting period, those information should go into the DSUR. It also section 4 goes to the changes to the reference safety information. Reference safety information means for PBRER PSUR we have the CDS. CDS means the safety information, where we have the safety information or the product knowledge. Okay, but for the clinical study, the IB, that is investigational brochure, is used as a reference safety information. So any changes occurs into the reference safety information, that information go into section 4. Section 5 is related to the inventory of clinical trials. It may be ongoing clinical trials or the completed clinical trial during the reporting period. So inventory means how many participants are enrolled, how many participants are aligned for the placebo, how many participants are aligned to the uh, drug treatment or the comparator molecule. So these information goes into, those numbers goes into section 5. Section 6 goes to the exposure data, means how much amount drug are they exposed to in clinical setting, how much amount of a drug is administered when in the post marketing experience. Then section 7 is listed as the data of line listing. So line listing is nothing but what are the adverse event. So what are the adverse event occurs into the reporting period? What is their numbers? How many are the listed, unlisted, serious, non-serious? So all those information go as an appendix into for the section 7. Section 8 focus on the completed clinical trials. What trials completed during the reporting period, and whether the outcome of these clinical trials gives any new safety, emerging safety or efficacy information. And the same goes with the ongoing clinical trials. What are the studies are ongoing during the reporting period? If there is any interim analysis has been performed, so those data will go into the ongoing clinical trials. Then long-term follow-up. We know that certain clinical trials ends, but the follow-up is still going on, right? So those studies are called as a long-term follow-up, and those long-term follow-up information will go into section 8.3. Then other therapeutic use of investigational drug, other than the indication, if any other therapeutic use is reported or the study is going on, those information will go. And any other new safety data related to the combination therapies. If the drug is used, suppose you are studying drug X, but the drug is X is also used in other drug combination, so X plus Y. So those information also go in section 8.5. Then section 9 deals with the non-interventional studies like observational studies, epidemiological studies. Section 10 deals with the other clinical trials or study safety information. So other clinical trials or study safety information means any co-development partner studies co-development partner is also performing the studies for the same molecule. So those information will go in section 10. Then safety finding from marketing experience, any post-marketing experience will go in section 11. Any non-clinical data, non-clinical investigations findings will go in section 12. The literature output, literature, any studies or any significant literature is mentioned into the PubMed or Embase database. Those selected literature article will go in section 13. Other DSUR, if whether DSUR is prepared for, within the reporting period, that will go in for section 14. Other DSUR means suppose that one DSUR for one product, but if the one product is also is a combination product, so uh, that information go in section 14. Any lack of efficacy from the clinical trials will go in section 15. Any region specific information will go in 16. Then section 17 deals with late breaking information. So what is late breaking information? We know that the DLP is 1 year. So today we got the approval 25th June 2020, and we need to prepare a data for yearly DSUR up to 24th June 2023, and we need to submit this document up till 23rd August 2023. So if we receive any information from 24th June 2023 till we submit the report to the regulatory authority, and if that data is a significant data which impact the safety or efficacy profile, we need to include those data in section 17, and that data is called as the late breaking information. Section 18 deals with the evaluation of risk, like whatever the identified and potential risk for the data, and summary of important risk is provided in section 19 in a tabular format, and section 20 is the conclusion. And some line listings will go, and the marketing authorization and other data will go as an appendices to the DSUR. Next slide, please. So PSUR and PBRA. So PSUR and PBRA is an important official regulatory document. Is need to be submitted for the marketed product after in the post-marketing phase, right? Once the drug is approved to approved for the receive the marketing authorization. So these PSUR and PBRA document is also provide the evaluation of risk-benefit balance of a medicinal product, and that has an MH has an obligation to submit these documents. Next slide, please. MH has an obligation to submit this report at a different time points during the post authorization phase. So as one DSUR, only one PSUR for one active substance regardless of the number of indications. So for example, one drug is methylprednisolone, but it is approved in multiple indication, it is available in multiple dosage form. So doesn't matter, only one DPSUR need to be prepared, which include all the indication, all the dosage form related information, and only we need to prepare a separate PSUR if the drug is used in a drug fixed dose combination. So these are the important points to be noted into the PSUR and PBRA document. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what is the objective? Again, the same objective is present the comprehensive critical analysis or the new or emerging safety information, emerging information in the risk of the medicinal product. And then second, it provides the global safety experience of the marketed product. It is a part of pharmacovigilance risk management meeting. It fulfills the regulatory requirements, and also is to establish whether the information recorded into the safety database is in accordance with the current knowledge of the safety profile, and also helps determine whether the changes should be made to the product information or not. So if we receive any significant informations or a new adverse effect that need to be included into the CDS or CSR reference information, so it helps us to analyze, and it helps us to decide whether the label information or any other information need to be updated or not. Next slide, please. So like that, as we discussed, the DIBD is the trigger for the DSUR. The same IBD, that is that's called as the international birth date. So international birth is a trigger for preparation of the PSUR. So what is IBD? We have already discussed. IBD is nothing but the when the MAH received the first marketing authorization of a product anywhere in the world. So once we receive the IBD, that generate IBD is responsible to generate the PSUR, and it is nothing but a single harmonized date for all authorization of a product anywhere in the world. So, so when we need to submit the PSUR should be submitted every 6 months for the first 2 years on the market. Then it need to be submitted annually for the next 2 years, and thereafter every 3 years. Sometime it need to be submitted immediate upon the request from the health authority. Again, note that one PSUR for one investigational product and one PSUR used everywhere around the world. So like that, we have some submission window. So DSUR we need to submit 60 days, within 60 days from no later than 60 days from the date of point. Similarly, if we are preparing a PSUR for 1 year or less than 1 year reporting period, we need to submit 70 days after DLP. And if we are preparing the PSUR for more than 1 year, okay, 1 year reporting period, then it need to be submitted by 90 days of the DLP. Next slide, please. So what are the contents of the PBRA? Introduction, it's the same like DSUR, which contains the basic information of the drug, mechanism of action, dosage form, etc. Then the worldwide marketing authorization status, it gives the information where it is approved, launch, or if any withdrawn, action taken for safety reason, the same information, whether any significant safety actions is taken during the reporting period. Changes to the reference safety information. For DSUR, the reference safety information is IB, but PBRA or PSUR, the reference safety information is the CDS or CSI. Okay. Then estimated exposure use pattern means how much amount of drug is utilized in the clinical trial setting, how much amount of drugs used in the post-marketing setting. Then data in summary tabulation, which gives the number of cases received interval and the cumulative means from the approval, first approval. And then the summary of significant clinical trial, the same information regarding the completed, ongoing, long-term follow-up, other therapeutic drug, and new safety related information in combination product, findings from non-interventional studies like observational epidemiological studies, information of other clinical trials and sources, non-clinical data, literature, other reports, lack of efficacy in controlled trials, late breaking information. Next slide. Once again, I would like to explain, late breaking information is nothing but the information which we received after the DLP till we submit the report to the health authority. So that in that window, if we receive any significant information, that is called as late breaking information. Overview of signal, new, ongoing, or close. Suppose if one product has certain side effect, okay, but few side effect is not mentioned into the label, right? And if you receive a report which is suspicious and which you consider there may be a causal association between the event and the medicinal product, but that event is not there, okay, so that report is triggered to generate the signal, okay. And once the signal is generated, it should be evaluated, and based on its evaluation, if it is verified and considered as an identified risk or important identified risk, then we need to update the label. If it is not verified with the safety database, then we have to refute the signals. We may take the separate lecture on the signal assessment. It's a very novel branch in pharmacovigilance, and there's a lot of opportunities are available for signal evaluations. Then signal and risk evaluation. So we know that we only include or provide the information on important identified risks. So important identified risk is nothing but the risk where which there is a um, impact to the public health. So we have to provide the data for those important identified risks, means how many cases are reported for that particular event, and whether how many are the serious, how many are the non-serious, whether the events are related, or is there any confounder are present. So separate lecture can be taken for the PBR PSCR documents, where we can detail the all sections in detail. Then section 17 is responsible for the benefit evaluations, where we analyze the baseline or efficacy or effectiveness information. Then section 18 deal with the benefit risk analysis, as it is a PBR document. So PBR document is deal with the benefit risk analysis for the approved indications only. And then conclusion and the all other informations as appended as an appendices. Next slide, please. So we seen there are two documents, PSUR and PBR. Many times we got confused. Sometimes the PBR is also called as a PSUR. But these documents, so initial ICH, International Council of Organization, as per ICH E2C R1, Revision 1 guideline, PSUR is a periodic basis safety document. But now this R2, Revision 2, replace the PSUR with the PBR. So what is the basic difference in between? In PSUR, we don't have the information regarding the benefit evaluation, but in PBR, we need to provide the information regarding the benefit evaluation. In PSUR, no integrated risk and benefit analysis performed, but in PBR, the integrated risk benefit analysis is performed. So like that, the PBR contain the more comprehensive, more information, not only in the risk, but also in the benefit balance. So PBR has more section as compared to PSUR. So just now we have seen the PBR has almost 19-20 section, but the PSUR has the only 9 to 10 sections. Next slide, please. Next slide. So PAIDER and PAIR. PAIDER and PAIR are generally the aggregate reports that need to be submitted to the FDA. So these reports are particularly required for the US submission. Next slide. So PAIDER and PAIR are the two different regulatory documents. Those are prepared to comply the US CFR. CFR is the Code of Federal Regulation. So as per the CFR 314.80, the PAIDER is prepared. As per the 21 CFR 600.80, so PAIR is prepared. So generally, PAIDER is submitted to the FDA CDR, Central for Drug Evaluation and Research, and PAIR are submitted to the FDA CBR, Central for Biological Evaluations and Research. And these reports are submitted to the product where we have an open NDA, that is New Drug Application or abbreviated New Drug Applications, or BLA, that's called as a Biological License Application. And the frequency, like PSUR, we need to submit 6 monthly for 2 years, then 1 yearly for 2 years, and then after once in a 3 year. But like that, the PAIDER is submitted quarterly for 3 years, and followed by annually. Next slide, please. So again, the objective of this PAIDER or PAIR is to provide the summary of safety experience of a marketing product. It will also fulfill the FDA post-marketing safety obligation. It establishes whether the information received during the reporting period is in accordance with the current knowledge of the profile, and it also helps determine whether or not the information received during the reporting period warrant changes the product labeling, and if there are any safety related issues, then it should be addressed into the document, and accordingly the label should be updated, and that information should be distributed or circulated to the physician to mitigate the risk or to avoid the potential adverse event, as we discussed in the initial objective of the pharmacovigilance. Next line. So PAIDER or PAIR are the very simple document. It does not contain the long sections like we've seen in DSU or PSU, where there are the multiple sections, like 20 sections. But the PAIDER PAIR are very simple document. It only contains the narrative summary of analysis of the information in the report. So narrative summary analysis, it contains not only how many expedited cases are reported. Expedited cases are, again, I'll would like to highlight, expedited cases are those cases where the event is assessed as unlisted, means the event is not listed in the product label, and the event are assessed as a serious, and those cases we need to submit within 15 days once the MH receives the report, and those called as an expedited report. So this narrative summary analysis views the expedited report, how many cases are reported received for expedited report, any follow-up information, how many non-serious cases or non-expedited cases received. So it also provides a detailed analysis on the expedited cases, means how many 15-day alert reports. 15-day alert report means the expedited reports received, and it also contain index where which has the line listing of the applicant, patient identification code, adverse reactions, and for all ICSRs. Next slide, please. Again, similarly, the PAIR document is called as the periodic adverse experience report. The only difference is PAIR is prepared for the drugs and PAIR is prepared for the biologicals. PAIR is submitted to the CDER, PAIR is submitted to the CBER. Okay, the same content, narrative analysis of the 15-day, any action taken, and also it has an appendix which contains all the line listings of the applicant identification code and the identification number, vaccine reports, etc. Next slide, please. So CAR. So what is CAR? CAR is nothing but another aggregate report, but that need to, next slide. CAR is another aggregate. Next slide. CAR is another aggregate report that needs is an again the official regulatory document that is submitted for any product which is marketed in Canada. Okay, so Health Canada generally required this Canadian annual summary report, and the preparation of this CAR is also triggered based on the IBD, that is International Birth Date. Okay, and suppose the if yeah, for that if the any PSUR is scheduled, so instead of CAR, if the PSUR if MH is preparing the PSUR for the same reporting period, the Canada Health Authority also accept the PSUR instead of CAR. But if there is no PSUR scheduled, then only CAR is sufficient to submit to the Canadian Health Authority. Again, the objectives for all the regulatory documents are similar: provide the global safety experience. It's a part of pharmacovigilance risk management monitoring. It fulfills the regulatory or reporting requirement, establish whether the information during the current reporting period is also in accordance with the known product safety information, and also help determine whether changes should be made in the product information or not. Next slide, please. So ACO is generally prepared whenever there is a license renewal. So ACO generally go as a package as a regulatory submission. So whenever their marketing authorization expect their license is expire for the molecule, they need to submit an ACO before 6 to 9 months before the license renewal date. Okay, so ACO is also an official regulatory document that is prepared for marketing marketed product in support the product renewal. It should be submitted 6 to 9 months before the renewal date, and SEO should be signed and accompanied by the CV of the clinical expert. Next slide, please. So the contents of ACOs are also almost similar with the PSU or document, but the only thing is the ACO also has a section which report the history of pharmacovigilance activity system. So if the MAH has market sell their drug in different markets, and different markets or regulatory authority conduct the pharmacovigilance system inspection, sorry, in inspection. So these, what is the history? Means how many inspections were conducted during the reporting period? What are the observations in the inspection? So these informations also need to submit when we are preparing the ACO. Okay, so ACO can be prepared for multiple country, or ACO can be prepared for one country where the MH is expecting the license need to be renewed. Again, it contains the same information. Marketing authorization status means the how many market the drug is approved, launched, withdrawn, action taken, significant changes to the safety information. Again, the significant change to the reference information. Reference information here is the CDS or CSI. Then the patient exposure, data in summary, tabulation, any significant findings from the clinical trials may be ongoing, completed. The non-interventional studies, non-clinical data, literature, risk evaluation, benefit risk balance, late breaking information, any information received after DLP till we submit the document to the regulatory authority. So within that window, any information that is late breaking information, conclusions, and this is go as a package along with the clinical expert statement that all the information presented in the report is aligned with the known product safety information. If it is, and if it is not, then we need to update the document accordingly how it deviate from the known safety profile of the product. So these are all about the regulatory documents that we need to submit as an obligate part of the pharmacovigilance system, and these reports are called as an aggregate report. I hope I have made you clear or aware about the different aggregate report which we need to submit to the regulatory authority. And these are the few references which I have referred for preparing this slide deck. If you have any questions, any doubt, you can reach out to me anytime. You are always welcome to ask any questions. Thank you so much once again, Sri Sai College of Pharmacy and Dr. Sunil Singh and Sarita Singh for giving me this opportunity to deliver this talk on aggregate reports. If any questions, I'll be happy to take all the questions.
Thank you, sir, for such a knowledgeable presentation talk about pharmacovigilance and safety profile of drugs. Now the session is open for question answer rounds. If anyone have query, please ask to him. Sir.
Hello.
Sir, you can see the chat.
Hello.
Hello.
DILPESH sir, you can see the questions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see the one question there. What is the phase 0 clinical trial? Okay. So phase 0 clinical trial is generally done with a small number of patients, or just to find out whether the very small number of patients, how it is tolerated by the patient, like to make sure is whether it is harmful or to the humans before they start using in a higher doses into later phase of the clinical trial. So those are called as a phase 0. Okay, why third phase is divided into two parts? So generally, third phase is divided into third A and third B. Whatever my understanding, my profile is not in with the clinical trials actually, but generally to analyze the information in better way. So we have the different phases in the trial, like third A and third B. So there are the two phases. I don't have much details on the different phases because my work is aligned with the safety reporting of the data, not with the trials. If we skip phase 3 clinical trial, okay, clinical trial, not chemical trial, what happens? Generally, we not receive any approval, no, if we not conduct the phase 3 clinical trial. The phase 3 clinical trial is very important to check the further safety and efficacy of information in a larger population. So how can fresher get a job as a medical writer in India? Yeah, since India is like a global hub, and as you see, the reporting percentage is also increase in India as well. So now we have the same, like we have a lot of opportunities. Like if, as a pharmaceutical student, we only see the drug safety unit, or in PV, we have just only see the case processing. But it is not correct. Not only the case processing, in case processing also we have the mini vertical domain where the students have an opportunity. Like as just we see the not only the data entry, but the medical review, case review, then literature report findings, aggregate report, label updates, in a QC of the data. So I can say, I can tell you, like there are almost more than 30-40 positions are this available for a pharmaceutical or the life science students to enter into the medical writer. So initially one can start their career with the the DSU as a drug safety unit as a case reporter, and later on they can enter into the post-marketing study. Any company can trial to their drug in another country, then which organization and which, if any drug company can trial to their drugs in another country, then which organization and which data is required to give permission to trial the drug in another country. So if any company wants to see that is the meaning of phase 3 study. We need to have the diversified information in phase 3 studies, and that is why we test our drug in different races, and that is why in different races we need to conduct the drug in different countries. So that country regulatory authority, first suppose if you want to do a trial, or if Pfizer want to do a trial in India, they also need a regulatory approval from CDSCO. So like that, all wherever we want to conduct the clinical trial, that regulatory, we need to seek the permission from those regulatory authority. But ultimately, when we submit this report, all the data which is reported in different countries, we need to pull up into the DSUR and submit to the different regulatory authority. So different regulatory authority means where the company is doing this study, all countries we need to submit that harmonized single report. CRO is a contract research organization. CRO is nothing but like if any drug molecule or a parent organization is not able to handling certain things by their own, they outsource the work, and that work is called as a CRO. That's contract research organization. So contract research organization generally work on behalf of the innovators company. Why was we had just discussed in history of pharmacovigilance? So pharmacovigilance started because there were certain incidents occurs in the past where that stimulate that there is a need to check the drug safety, even though the drug is being marketed into the drug is being marketed. So in earlier phase, if you notice in before the thalidomide tragedy, only the data from the clinicals and non-clinical trials were considered sufficient to give the approval, and there were no follow-up activities are presented, and that is why the pharmacovigilance has been started. It's not like by whom who has started, but it's several tragedy occurs in the past, and based on that, several nations has started their own initiative to get those reports. Describe a time you simplified complex medical treatment inform. Describe a time you simplified. I didn't get the question. Describe a time you simplified complex medical treatment information for patient. Can you please post your question once again?
I think question is not clear, sir.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. Might be
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Another question. Yeah, please skip.
What is the difference between risk and signal? Both are same. Okay, signal means what? The signal means any information which you find there is a suspicion between the event and the medicinal product. And if that event, that suspicion, you analyze and you consider that there is adequate evidences that the event is occurred because of the medicinal product, then that event is considered as a risk, and accordingly the document is updated or the label is updated. What are the due dates for safety reporting? What is the inverted block? Okay, due date in safety reporting. So I told you, no, due date in safety reporting, like it is based on the DLP. Okay, so generally when the initially the drug is being is approved, so for that 6 monthly we submit the report depending on the report. For PSU, a 6 monthly report for first 2 years. For paid or pair, we prepare the quarterly reports for the 3 years, and accordingly we need to submit the report to the regulatory authority. So try and triage is nothing but the prioritizing the report, like based on the once you receive the report, if the report contains the serious unexpected events, so that is called as the that gives the first priority, and then second priority with the non-serious and the listed event. Can I call a false signal? So false signal for what? False signal is like if it is validated signal, so signal validated, but this validated signal, if there is a sufficient evidences, then it can be turned into the identified risk or important identified risk or potential risk or important potential risk. But if there is no sufficient evidences to establish the relation, then it is considered as a refuted signal that you can consider as a false. IND, NDA, NBA. IND is the investigational new drug. IND means whenever there is a marketing authorization wants to start a clinical trials, they need to seek an approval from regulatory authority. That application form is called as IND. Whenever the clinical trial is over and the data is suggested that the significant amount of information is good to approve that drug molecule for the market, then that application is an NDA, that is new drug application. So innovator receives the NDA, but once the patent time is expired and now that drug molecule is available for other pharmaceutical company, so other pharmaceutical company also wants to perform their BAB studies, and those BAB data they have to submit to the regulatory authority for the marketing of approval, and that form and that detail of information is called as the ANDA. BLA is a biological license application, that is a specific form which furnish all the information for the biological product, maybe vaccines or biosimilars. So these are the different forms by which we can receive the approval. Minimum qualification for join in pharmacovigilance, like any life science background, B.Pharm, BScs are also like welcome in qualification. So minimum qualification is a life science graduate. So module 5, module 7, and module 11. So I think these are the, if you're asking with the GVP module, so this GVP module, these are the like very huge document. It's not possible to explain in short, but these are the GVP modules which is prepared by the good pharmacovigilance by EMA, and those documents describe like the RMPs and PSUs. Those stuffs are described in module 5 and module 7. The same question, same answer. Minimum qualification is the any life science background as well. So generally, pharmaceutical company give more preference to the B.Pharm because they have more knowledge about the drugs and pharmacology. So pharmacy students has bright like more career opportunities in PV system. So yellow card we already discussed. Yellow card is a system which were formed by the United Kingdom, and that is generally a form which compile all the spontaneous report for the safety information. So how do you keep knowledge with the current trends and files? So it can be do with by regular reading of the articles. You can update yourself by drugs update. There are certain website also, no, drugs update and other website. You can up to date with this. You can visit the regulatory sites. You can read the amendments. In notification section, you can go and you can get updated yourself with the new information of the drug. So certain site might help you and certain drugs will help you. So E2A, E2B, E2C is nothing but the different ICH guidelines which enables the company for submission of the safety report and the PSUR of the case. So these are the different guidelines for the ICH. We can have the separate session on various E2A guidelines where we can see the detailed information on that. In short, I can say these are the only ICH guidelines by which you can submit the form. So they're like I2, E2A, E2B, E2C, E2E, E2F. There are the different standards for those. In those things, you can see the information for the different definition and standards for expedited reporting for E2A, E2B for the case reporting. Any other questions?
Anyone having other? Okay, no anyone. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to call our principal, Dr. Sunil Singhar, to present appreciation certificate to Dr. Dilpesh Prakash Jain. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, madam. First of all, I'm highly thankful to Dr. Dilpesh sir. He have given us a very precious time for his busy schedule, sir. Thank you very much. And after that, we have to also thankful to our staff, colleagues, and students. They have given enthusiasm and patience also for listening this such kind of topics that is a very current topic and very useful for our students also. That is, they can make his or her career in this field also. So, on the behalf of Sri Sai College of Pharmacy, we have to represent one certificate to you, sir. Please accept it on online basis, sir. Please accept it. Thank you again, once again. Thanks very lot, sir. Over to Sarita, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, principal, sir. Now we can leave. Thank you once again.